And good afternoon, everybody. It is Steve Schmidt with The Warning. I'm thrilled today to be joined by the one, the only Martisa Georgiou in Minneapolis of the Grounded podcast. We'll have Martisa for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to go to Greenland where we have the one and only Malcolm Nance, Black Man Spy, Canada's finest, Dean Blundell, and going to have a great conversation today. But first to Minneapolis. Maritza, you spent some time with Governor Walz earlier today. How is the governor's mood? How is his stamina? How is his morale after a month of chaos and crisis in his state?
Yeah, hi Steve. Good to see you. I was in the middle of a live shot when he showed up to the scene where Alex Preddy was killed on Saturday, and so he came out with the First Lady Gwen Walz, and they really were there for a few moments just to pay respects. It was very somber. He looked completely just defeated. Like he just, it's there's just so much sadness, and it's palpable. And he talked to the press a little bit. I was unfortunately live on TV when that happened, so I didn't get to be in the scrum. But I went in and I chatted with him, afterward, and he just said that it's just devastating, and they just there are no words. And he just continues to say that you can't just say a few things to make this better. Like this is going to affect Minnesotans in this country for generations. What's happening?
What is the mood amongst the people that were on the streets a few days ago in shock and sadness, holding vigil at the murder site? Are people still on the streets? Is there the de-escalation evident in the air that we keep hearing about on a lot of national news broadcasts? How do you assess towards the end of the week the mood in Minneapolis?
I think I think it's wide ranging. It goes from complete sadness to being completely overwhelmed to being angry. And I've had so many people write me and say, "Oh, well, I heard they're leaving. I heard they're leaving. I heard they're leaving." And people here on the ground say, "No, they are not leaving. In fact, yesterday was a really aggressive day for community raids. I heard about several communities around the Twin Cities that saw a major ICE presence yesterday. In fact, even showing up at school bus stops. I'm hearing that they're following people to their like naturalization meetings, and taking them from there. So the tactics have not died down. This operation has not died down. I know that the governor and the president talked about that a little bit, about even reducing, the sheer force here, the amount of people here for DHS and ICE, but these operations continue. And so I think that there's a misunderstanding broadly in the nation that all of a sudden, oh, things are much better. Now, I think that, less troops is better than for this community than the full force that they've seen. That's the opinion on the ground. But they continue to say, like, this is not over, and we're going to keep fighting until it is.
When you talk to a government official in Minnesota, and the conversation turns to Tom Homan, who preposterously, in my view, is now billed as some type of reasonable person to send to Minnesota, someone capable of gaining trust on all sides. This is a guy who was caught by the FBI accepting $50,000 in cash in a kava bag for future private prison contracts. He's a corrupt architect of this obscenity that's playing out. How are Minnesota officials reacting to his arrival in the state vis-a-vis Bovino's departure?
Yeah, I think what I've heard is it was a welcome change of tone, certainly, and maybe more of a professional meeting. But certainly, the governor just said today, you can't just fix this with a few words and promises. Like they want to see action. And even yesterday, I mean, you saw the president talk about a great meeting with Mayor Fry, but then, he turned on him today and kind of went after him, and Mayor Fry responded, of course. So it's still tense. I wouldn't say anybody's making friendship bracelets here, but they're hoping that these discussions will lead to the removal of this operation in the Twin Cities metro area and beyond. Really, I mean, this is happening in other parts of Minnesota too.
I asked you a question the other day, and I want to re up it, and you'll know the answer. Is the names of the two ICE agents who murdered Alex Preddy, are those names still unknown and not being reported, or is it that they're known and it's not being reported?
I have not seen the names, Steve. I've been in interviews this morning, but I did see that they were on administrative leave. That was the last headline I saw that came across my phone. So it seems that they're actually taking those precautions and going through normal protocol, seemingly normal protocol beyond what they did with Renee Good. But it's still not a widely known thing, and we're still hearing things that are coming out. I mean, there's been this reporting that Alex Preddy was known to the government, to federal officials, that they were aware of him. They had documentation of him, that he had been in an altercation just a few weeks prior and actually broke a rib. So that's causing some alarm here. Like, how far does the surveillance go here, and how many people who are maybe not in the immigrant community but in this resistance community are being tracked?
Um, is there? Well, let me come back and I'll follow up on that in a second. But if I was the Attorney General of Minnesota, I don't think that there would be any doubt in a single human being's mind, no matter where you sit on this issue, that my life's work would be dedicated to prosecuting the agents who did this. I would get them if it was the last thing I ever did. Do you get the sense that Attorney General Ellison in Minnesota shares my passion for his job?
Yes, I do. I think that they are trying every legal avenue at this point. I mean, we've seen the lawsuits filed to remove ICE, in general. But then beyond that, I think that they are trying to do whatever they can. I mean, we saw the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension actually on scene yesterday. And so, that's progress. That's progress, right? And to have the evidence preserved, that's progress for them. So I think they're going to do everything they can to continue that effort.
When you talk about the surveillance, have you talked to any state legislators, or is the governor or anyone on the governor's team focused on trying to uncover the links between ICE and, say, some of the technology companies? While they may have no standing to investigate ICE or to subpoena ICE or subpoena federal officials, the mini Minnesota legislature does have the power to subpoena technology executives who would sell, for example, the surveillance tools to ICE and get a handle if those technologies are being employed against citizens in Minnesota. Is there seemingly any strategy to use the full power of the Minnesota government's sovereignty to get to the bottom of some of these things, or are people so on their back heels because of the crisis that they're just not in a position where they're taking that type of initiative?
I think that I'm not in these conversations, and so they're like, I think you make a good point. They are on their back heels. There's so much to respond to, which is part of the strategy, as we know, the flood the zone strategy that Steve Bannon talked about. So I think that is part of it. But I will tell you that there are legislators, lawmakers from at least 23 states traveling to Minnesota tomorrow, and they are holding a press conference at the state capitol here in St. Paul. And so I imagine that will be discussed. Additionally, the FBI has warned that they're going to start investigating what they're calling activist groups, this like broad resistance. And so, when you get notification of that, when you hear Kash Patel say the FBI is going to start investigating, I'm sure that they were looking into this. We've seen just incredible use of technology here, and it both helps and hurts this resistance movement, right? I mean, because they can coordinate quickly and use this broad network in an instant and reach a bunch of people, but it's also been infiltrated, and so they're using Signal, and these groups are being infiltrated regularly. And I just saw one of the independent journalists who has been out documenting as much as he can, and he's been taking a lot of videos of these raids and these detainments by ICE agents. He had a right wing influencer show up on his front door and record a video and threatening him and basically saying, we know where you live and there are consequences to what you're doing. So it is dangerous work what's happening here, and they're worried. The people who are trying to be part of this resistance on so many levels, they're worried about what it could be. So they're using code names. I mean, it reminds me a lot of what I've read about in history books and books about Europe in the 30s and 40s, and kind of the same tactics used with knowing people by code name and not actually knowing their face or where they live.
You spent some time with those resistance leaders in the state, the opposition groups. What is their morale? What is their mood right now?
It goes from being totally engaged and angry and motivated and hopeful that they're making a difference to feeling total despair. I think it just runs the full spectrum. And I talked to a woman today, and she said that she's either like hyper vigilantly engaged or almost like non-respondent. Just there's no in between, because it's just constant work, and being part of this movement has just become normal part of their daily life, like walking a dog, checking Signal, going down to the corner, making sure you don't leave the house without your whistle. I mean, these are things that they're thinking about and doing on a daily basis. It's incredible, this network, and how they continue to stay activated and engaged and motivated, and there's just always somebody. And she told me she showed up to a training on the day that Renee Good was killed, and they didn't know what to expect, and more than 750 people showed up that day in just that one meeting to get trained on how to stay legal, nonviolent, how to be effective, how to not harm the people they're trying to hurt inadvertently. And so it's pretty incredible, and so incredible, I think, that's a lot of them feel like that's why there's been so much discussion about, well, they're paid protesters or they're paid activists. And I know that's being floated again today, that there's maybe some link to a billionaire with links to China. And the thing that they're saying is, no, we are just that invested and committed and coordinated. And kind of the joke is like, these are hockey moms, and these are people who organize church basement potlucks on a moment's notice. Like, they know how to coordinate. It's just the mission is much more serious now.
All right, last question for you, and I'll let you go. I know you have a lot of things ahead on your day. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Oh boy.
And um, and I'm not asking you to make a political prediction, but to talk rather about a feel in the air, a mood. And for those that don't watch the Grounded podcast, you should. Martisa is a really fantastic, deeply knowledgeable political reporter, in that she's someone that I know just from talking with over years and knowing Martisa. She gets politics, and as an old political consultant, I'm a harsh judge on this, because a lot of people don't get politics, and we probably wouldn't be in this mess if more people did get politics. But when you think about Tom Emmer, who's the highest ranking congressional Republican in the state, and the side that he has staked out in this, Tom Emmer 2 weeks ago was not worried about losing his seat. Should Tom Emmer be worried that he may be in a competitive race here? Can you see a scenario where the Republican Party is destroyed effectively in the state because of this?
I think that if there's anything that would destroy it, this is it. I mean, um, we've become so desensitized to so many things, horrific things that happen in the world, because we're just constantly bombarded with news and, numbers and headlines that just really kind of become headlines. But on the ground here, I mean, you cannot avoid this. Everybody knows somebody affected by this. And there is such an emphasis on caring for your fellow neighbor here and seeing humans as humans. And so I know we've seen some language from Tom Emmer that has flipped on how he used to sound when he talked. And I think that there is something that's happened just this past week that we've seen. All of a sudden, I'm seeing Republican politicians call for an investigation, and it seemingly happened all within the same day. And I've heard some people in the political sphere speculate, well, yeah, that's because it's planned and they're being told to do that, and it's kind of a coordinated effort and approval from the administration. But people on the ground here are frustrated. And like I told you the other day, I talked to some conservative people down at that protest the very same day. It's hard to even believe, just later that afternoon, that Alex Preddy was killed. And they said, this is not what we want. We saw, a gubernatorial candidate who was a lawyer who provided legal counsel for, the officer who shot Renee Good. He said, this is not what I stand for. And I am not only backing out of the race, but essentially said, I can't be part of the Republican Party if this is what it means. So I think there is a sea change here. But as you know, this administration and MAGA in general has a diehard following, and they're still in their vacuums and they're still in their silos. And so again, I just think, to tell these stories, which is what I'm trying to do, like real human stories, and to see this and talk to people with the goal of understanding them as people and seeing the humanity and trying to use empathy and compassion. I think that's the best way out of this. And, I hope that it's just, people are so sad, and they just are suffering because they're so worried about their neighbors, or what it's going to mean, down the road and for generations. And I think one little girl I talked to yesterday, she said, it doesn't feel like anybody's safe. And that's really scary, to hear from anybody. But when you hear a 12-year-old girl say that's really hard.
Perfect place to end it. A 12-year-old little girl in Minneapolis, Minnesota, saying it doesn't feel like anyone's safe. And no one is in Donald Trump's America. You can find Martisa Georgiou at the Grounded podcast, along with her partner, one of my all-time favorite U.S. senators, the great John Tester of Montana. And Martisa and John have a great podcast. You all should subscribe. You should listen to it. Martisa, thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet. Let's go to Greenland. We have Black Man Spy Malcolm Nance. We have Dean Blundell live from Nuuk. Gentlemen, how are you?
Yeah, we're good, buddy. We're good. It's it's funny. We're listening intently to you. The incredible reporting from Martisa in Minnesota, and while we were listening, this will set the tone for the conversation today, Steve. While we were listening, someone with an American flag, presumably an American, tried to run the American flagpole up the Nuuk, Greenland sacred flagpole right at the center of town, at the harbor, right in front of the Mother of the Sea statue. Yeah, the cultural center of Greenland. And I mean, we're talking about a cultural center that houses 4,500 years of indigenous history. So, we're ready to talk about
that. Just happened right now?
That literally just happened right now. We just tweeted it out. If you go to Twitter, Malcolm.
Yeah, there's the video.
Yeah, it's police showed up. They confiscated, this is the good news, obviously. They confiscated the flag, and you saw a gentleman, what appeared to be in a camouflage coat, come and ask for the flag back. He's not getting the flag back. But that'll set the tone for the conversation today, Steve, here in Nuuk, Greenland, where Greenlanders are currently still preparing and escalating their preparation because this isn't going anywhere.
Well, do me a favor if you can, and the authorities would agree to it. Malcolm, if you can get your hands on that flag, let's bring that flag back to the United States, and let's have that desecrated flag turned over to the American Legion where it can be properly burned and disposed of, which is what we do to put down an American flag that's been damaged, that's been desecrated. We burn that flag with honor.
That's the proper.
And so,
yeah, that's the proper way of disposing of a flag. But let me explain what happened here. Someone, most likely an American, who spent thousands of dollars to get here. Just the flight from Copenhagen to Nuuk is almost $1,500 round trip just from Copenhagen. And from Keflavik is double that. But this person came here to carry out this stunt, whether it was, some influencer who comes to put the flag up. It's ridiculous. He desecrated that flag,
yep.
not the police of Greenland.
Yeah, of course.
These cops who are here are from Copenhagen, and they're on rotation. They don't live here most of the time. So when you get a disturbance where they go right there, that cultural center is actually where the parliament is, the police station is, and where they do all the major cultural events and briefing. And he takes down one of the Greenland flags and runs up the American flag. The only saving grace here is, and you're right, I'm going to go see if I can get that flag back. But the only saving grace here is that I wasn't around there, because I would have beat his ass. I mean, we don't need America being, these chaos agents who he may have been sent here. Thought this was funny, one of the Nick Shirley type characters who will come here to create an international incident. These people here are already on pins and needles. And what I don't need is, I don't need an American or somebody who's coming here to play games or who is paid to come here and raise the American flag over Greenland. What you will get is me beating his ass live on TV. That's all you're going to get.
I would love to live stream it.
Steve, if I can, I just want to interject. This was in a place where we left 15 minutes earlier. So, that was that young little prick's lucky day, because we were with Jacob Karsvo, Danish intelligence, who also has a streak to him, and Mr. Malcolm Nance. So, we haven't had a chance to decamp about it, but yeah, I mean, that is his lucky day to try that stunt today for sure.
Yeah, it's going all over their internet.
So you two ran into a Fox News reporter, I understand, yesterday, and he was surprised, Dean, that you had no idea who he was, I'm told. And then, I'm told that Malcolm Nance gave the Fox News reporter a piece of his mind. And before we get into that, do you think there's any chance the Fox News reporter is there to capture the stunt on film? Was there a camera out there? Was the Fox News guy ready to film the American flag being run up the pole in coordinated action?
I don't think so. That guy, all the major networks are here. CNN left after they had the big stunt of, thinking like they were going through a blizzard where it's been really wonderful weather here. But some of the major organizations are still here doing their interviews. And what happened was, I don't know who this guy was. You can look him up. He's some young, clean baby face,
really pretty
boy.
Yeah, very pretty.
And we were sitting in a cafe, and he recognized me because he knew I was on MSNBC as a analyst. And he's like, "Oh, Malcolm Nance, how are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm fine." He goes, "Oh, I'm Joe Blow from Fox News," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, whatever." And more importantly, he goes, I said, "So are you guys covering this story?" He says, "Yes." And then he goes into, I said, I can't even imagine what you're reporting on this, because I used to be an on-air guest on Fox News Saturday with Tony Snow, who became George W. Bush's press secretary before he passed away.
White House colleague, yeah.
He was actually a journalist. And, this guy he was no nonsense. And I said, "Yeah, I was on Fox News as a guest for almost a year when you had journalists." And I guess he took a little offense to that. And then, He
So
said,
how did
well,
he take offense? What did he?
because
What did he?
I
What
guess
did he say? Well, how was he affronted?
I guess he considers himself a journalist.
Steve wants details.
Yeah, he wants details. So what I did next was I said, well, listen, I can't even imagine how it's being conducted on Fox News, but, there is absolutely no need for all of this. He goes, well, we're going to have this great golden dome. And, I was a Navy chief petty officer, senior chief petty officer, and I have zero tolerance for BS. Zero. And more importantly, I've got decades at this game. So when somebody comes up and says something ridiculously stupid to me, you are going to get a major recalibration. Okay, I'm going to bring you back into alignment of reality, whether I have to do it through tree line, counseling, or whether I'm going to do it through information sharing. So I brought him back into line because I worked at a national nuclear command post when I was assigned to NSA. They sent some of us to go work at a, mile underground nuclear bunker. And the first thing they do, and this is what I said to them, they run a simulation and they ask you, where are you from? You go, oh, Ames, Iowa, Chalice, Idaho, Poughkeepsie. They put them up on the big board. And then they run a full-scale Soviet or Russian attack on the United States, 4,000 atomic bombs, all thermal launching and coming over the horizon. And you watch your little town get nuked on there. And then at the end of that, when you're all stopped crying, they go, now, have we learned what we're here for? That's never going to happen, right? Well, this guy says, well, Golden Dome would be able to stop that. And I'm like, no one's stopping 5,000 atomic bombs, you idiot. You're 23 minutes from the end of the world. Don't go around trying to BS people into believing that $1 trillion boondoggle will be something that we could actually assemble. It's just theft of money because you're all dying if that thing happens in real life. We have people who are realists. This is what they are here for. This guy didn't even know it. So anyway,
So
I
what's
worked on
he?
him for a few more minutes.
What's he doing there? What's the story
Good
that he's there
question.
covering?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question. We don't know what he's there to cover, and it was interesting because after Malcolm took his head off and served it to him on a platter at this little cafe in front of the cultural center, which just saw the desecration of the Greenland flag. He introduced himself to me, and I had no idea who this guy was, but he was incredibly fucking nervous. Pardon my language, incredibly nervous. Because Malcolm just, opened him up. And we started to talk about it, like the purposes of him being there. And, the interesting aspects of this are, the on the ground relationship making, the influence pattern here.
Mhm.
We've met several people, and being with, a career spy, being with two career spies, actually, Jacob Carsbro from the Danish intelligence, former U.S. Security Council
Mhm.
member. He's our kind of liaison, and he's also, he speaks the language, so he's a translator, but he's also incredibly valuable because he understands the entire history of the Denmark Greenland relationship. The interesting aspect of this is that Fox News reporter is taking information back that is a complete lie. The Golden Missile Dome is just another public grift. It's like the fucking, pardon again, I can't stop, Steve. I know you love me, but apologize. I'll try and keep the filth flooring down. The Golden Missile Dome is really like the Board of Peace, only with fake missiles, as opposed to a fake dictator group of people trying to pretend to replace NATO, right? So he was convinced that this was an incredible idea. But when we left, next night, go for dinner. Mary, who's the co-founder of the organization, we all have dinner with Denver Riggleman, Ken Harbaugh. We're sitting around the table, and I see him at dinner at a different place. And he's incredibly nervous, and he, says goodbye, calls me buddy, and falls and goes up the stairs. We had a great laugh about it, but then we started to kind of talk about the subversive nature of what the Trump regime does. They are paying people, and Malcolm can speak to this, looking for people to pay, Greenlanders to pay, going, door to door, not like ICE, but, trying to conduct relationships and pay different people here. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that this Fox News reporter, who, thank God, I still have no idea who he is
Well,
one of those guys, right? And you still don't know who he is
I
either.
do now.
So, if indeed he was here to film this stunt, which I wouldn't put it past state-funded media, Trump state-funded media, Fox News to do, it's incredibly fitting because the other reporters that are here aren't as front and center. They aren't in the town. They aren't at the places. And we've been fortunate to go to a couple of places that you have to go to speak to certain people. And it's absolutely amazing, Steve. I know this is going to sound weird, but that gentleman from Fox News keeps showing up and weird shit keeps happening around him. So whether or not he's conducting some sort of influence program and the U.S. government is, Donald Trump, his favorite people. I mean, but you talk about espionage and the way it works. That's how it works, right? You go and get somebody.
So here's your man, Lucas
Who is that?
Tomlinson. Lucas
What's his name?
Tomlinson.
Lucas
I wonder
Tomlinson?
Yes.
if you
Naval
see him
Academy
again.
grad,
Naval Academy grad.
2001. He worked on human terrain teams in Afghanistan. And I'm going to recalibrate him again because, see, as a chief, officers who screw up in front of me get it twice. All right? And he obviously wasn't a very high-ranking officer, or he would have tried to pull that, I'm a major, I'm a lieutenant commander, I'm a whatever on me. But, like I said, my job, officers sign off on my work. I actually do the work. Okay? And to have a guy like this sitting here praising the Golden Dome and Pete Hegseth, and I had some choice things to say about Pete Hegseth, too. But, this is the kind of guy, he's probably striking to be Undersecretary of Defense, or Assistant Secretary of the Navy by sitting here and kissing ass on the Trump agenda. And you cannot do that in front of me when I have worlds more experience. I was here a year ago warning about what's going on today. And here we are.
Of course, the U.S. ambassador to Greece, Kimberly Guilfoyle, famously fired from Fox News for sexual harassment and misconduct. So maybe if you see him later, you can ask him two questions for me. One, is Jesse Waters stupider than Pete Hegseth? And two, did Ambassador Guilfoyle ever try to grab his cock at work? and then if I was there,
I'm calling HR.
And if I was there, those
yeah.
would be my two questions, and then I'd tell them to get the fuck out of there.
Well,
Steve, I got to say before you move on to the next segment, the next question, I love you, and I know you're capable of. It's really good that you're not here this time. It's really, really good you're not here.
Yeah, I have a hard enough time getting permission to go out with you, and I think the combination of the three of us was just a bit much. It was rejected by management, in fact, and so that's why we're not together.
I know.
Well, when you think about this guy trying to run the American flag up the pole there in Nuuk, what's the reaction going to be on the island as this becomes news and across Denmark?
I think that there's going to be a small backlash at the local level. The thing is that, other than people like myself, it's sort of hard to tell an American from a Dane. But, which is why I'm very interested in finding out who this individual is, to see if we saw him before, if he spoke to him, or if it's just, one of those influencers down there. And we're going to Daddy's Bar tonight, right? Which is where Trump is. And we know we're going to run into that guy there, right? He'll be bragging about this, and then he'll get his ass kicked. But all I'm saying is this: after he gets his ass kicked, the people of Greenland are going to take this as a sign that Americans are suspect, not America. I mean, America, they already have their concerns about. But now, if individuals will spend thousands of dollars, a minimum of $3,000 to get here, and then it's $200 a night in the lowliest place that you have here to come do some stupidity like this, is a level of commitment, or they may see it as the first step of a subversion campaign that we've been waiting for some time, that there would be an actual influencer campaign. We thought we'd see it on Twitter, Facebook, and all those first. But this, if somebody had done this, it would be the first thing they run on Fox News. It would be, Trump would be retweeting it. And then we'd be back to square one. And people would be stockpiling 5 days of food and buying, ammunition and gun from the gun stores that are all over the place.
When you read a elite journalist in a MAGA adjacent publication saying things like, only ridiculous people believe that the United States would invade Greenland. Your response to that is what?
Wow. I mean, I'm a career intelligence professional, and I saw the pattern of this last year. When I heard the first talk about invading Greenland actually started back in 2019. Not invading, but annexing it. Started in the first Trump administration. And then it popped up right after before the inauguration, with Eric Trump flying here in Air Force, in his Trump aircraft, bringing influencers like Nick Shirley and going around and getting homeless people off the streets and drunks and putting MAGA hats on them. To me, that's what we call an unambiguous intelligence indicator. It is a physical manifestation of a series of discussions that have taken place in private that have led to Eric, go there and tell me what it's like. He flies over, but when he goes back, this thing turned into, by March of last year, the same level of tension we had. Right after he returned, 2 days after the inauguration, Trump calls Mette Frederiksen, the prime minister of Denmark, and the Danish news described it as she left that call in a panic, because he probably said, we're taking it, there's nothing you can do about it, and it's a done deal. And of course, everybody in Europe is very nice. So as it trickled out, it was the same kind of conversation Justin Trudeau had, when Trump said the same thing to him. We're going to annex Canada. We are bringing it on as the 51st state. And Trudeau came back to Canada and to Ottawa and was like, hey, this is serious. They're not joking about this. When I get indicators like this, there's like 5 or 6 major meeting points, Steve, where you have team group meetings and you have a presidential belief or a finding is secretly written and the whole cabinet starts an all-of-government approach to meeting that objective. I saw that by March of last year, and I was on, when they passed the order for U.S. intelligence to increase its collection against Denmark. What the hell? Do you want to know what the fishing boat schedule is here? I can tell you right now, 156.6 is the frequency where you're going to get 90% of your communications out of Denmark, because it's freaking fishing boat channel, right? Channel 16. That's it. That's all. They fired the guy who was the biggest intelligence collector here, the U.S. Agency for International Development guy. He knew more about Greenland than the CIA. And the CIA, they're just going to set up in Iceland and stay at a 5-star hotel and burn through 6 months of per diem because it's the stupidest fucking assignment they've ever been given. So that's it. No, really, this is true. This is how it's done. And Fort Meade, Maryland, NSA, nobody there is going to do that mission. Nobody. They believe they are constitution holders, and they won't break the law for nobody. Or if they want to fulfill that, they will just hand them a digital recording of the fishing boats.
Have you
off of Norfolk, Virginia, right?
Malcolm, I want to get to Dean here in a second
on,
and ask you a question about Canada. But I know this. I know the answer for Dean. But have your travels ever brought you, Malcolm, to the New Hampshire State Capitol building?
It's in Concord?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been there.
So
yeah, I've been there.
The New Hampshire State Capitol building is a national gem. It was a stop on Lafayette's tour 200 years ago, and it has within it one of the largest collections of American battle flags in the world, going back to the Revolution. Some of the cases there haven't been opened since 1918, and curators believe that these flags, any contact with the air will simply disintegrate them. The unit of the New Hampshire, the flag of the New Hampshire regiment that followed the 54th Massachusetts into battle at Fort Wagner, for example, hangs in those cases. But around the Capitol, you have some incredible old paintings, and one of them is of a Union general, and he's an austere-looking man. He's a tough-looking guy, and the painting catches your eye, right? That's a tough-looking guy, and his quote was, "If anyone tries to run down the American flag, shoot him in the head." And that's his quote next to his painting hanging in the New Hampshire Capitol. And I think it's a great piece of advice for you guys to pass on to some of the Greenland officials there about the flagpole. Is the Save America movement is an advocate for a Danish soldier standing at the flag, and by all means, particularly if it's an American coming down to take it, maybe shooting him in the head is the right thing to do.
Steve,
may save a lot of lives in the end.
They're good shots here. 37,000 guns, 57,000 people, long rifles. They don't miss. But to your point, I just want to, before we get to Canada, just focus on the flag issue just for a second. Because, Mike Flynn once said it, and we all know about Mike Flynn. We know what book he's read. We know who his master is. And his thing was own the flag, own the narrative. And, not only did we see some chuckle fuck today try and run the American flag up of what is really, to the people of Nuuk, a very sacred space and a very important flagpole that denotes the hardiness and the culture and the people and the survival society that exists here. But and the community that exists here. I mean, these people love each other. They really, really do. There's never been a tribal war. There's
never been a tribal war in the 4,000 years that they've been here. And it's a survival society.
Yeah, it really, really is. And so you have to work together, right? And so to see that today, and then to see another piece of news that happened, and it happened this morning, really upset Jacob Karsbo, former Danish intelligence, who was in Afghanistan, who is furious with the disrespect that the Trump regime is treating, the sacrifice of the Danish war dead. Ken Howery, who is the Danish ambassador, who's part of the Bro oligarchy, and he's dumped a bunch of money here into Greenland for the opportunity to abuse these beautiful human beings in this culture. Ken Howery had a bunch of flags ripped down that represented, was it 44, Jacob? 44 Danish soldiers? 44 Danish soldiers that gave their lives for the United States of America after 9/11 and Article 5 was triggered, right? They answered the bell, as did so many. And so, after Donald Trump disabused them of the sacrifice that their sons and daughters made alongside Americans, when Donald Trump said they laid back a little bit, they didn't really do too much, the people of Denmark went and planted these little flags on the end of sticks in the flower beds in front of the Danish embassy in Copenhagen. Within an hour, Ken Howery had them all ripped out. All of them ripped out. Every single one. And today there are not hundreds, but thousands of Danish flags in those potted beds today.
And Ken Howery is the American ambassador?
The American ambassador, who's he's the tech bro who is trying to get Greenland for Peter Thiel and the rest so that they can create a tech bro network city here. Practice.
Yeah. We will we'll talk about him a little bit offline, and some actions we'll take there to be in support of the Danish people. You mentioned the name Justin Trudeau, and I say two things about him. I say, first, thank God he's gone. And two, there are 8 billion people on the planet, and him and Katy Perry are made for each other. They are the perfect couple.
They really are.
Beyond any doubt. I just wanted to opine on that. I don't know how they hold hands and not float away, but it is an incredible achievement that these two have found each other and come together. But now Canada has a Iron Man as its prime minister, and the right man at the right time in the right place, Mark Carney. And I wrote about Mark Carney when he became prime minister. And I talked about in my piece that Mark Carney had a rendezvous with destiny, that Mark Carney was going to become the leader of the English speaking peoples of the world, that he would become the heir to Winston Churchill, to John Kennedy, to Franklin Roosevelt, that it would be up to Mark Carney, not the feckless British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, but Carney, to be able to put into words the threat the world faces from the American fascists and begin to articulate to the world a strategy, a plan that in the end is the only way to confront Donald Trump effectively. He cannot be appeased. You cannot appease a fascist. It does not work. He just gets inspired to take more and more and more. How proud are you as a Canadian of Mark Carney as your prime minister? And is there any sense around Mark Carney about how deeply admired he is by so many people in the United States? Do they understand that?
It's a great question, Steve. And listen, I'm wearing this for a reason. I'm wearing Canada flair everywhere in beautiful Nuuk, and I gave these guys some Canada flags to put on their patches on their bags as well, so they could hide in plain sight. And it was a big week for Canada, but it was really a big week for. There you go. Put that on, Malcolm Nance. There you go.
There you go.
Huh? There he is.
I'm practically living in Montreal now. So.
Yeah. He lives in Montreal. Steve, you spent a lot of time, half your time in the beautiful country of Canada. Listen, I have to tell you, dodging a bullet doesn't really do it justice. The fact that Mark Carney became our prime minister at this moment, at this time, Churchillian, absolutely. His speech in Davos really broke Donald Trump. And fortunately, because of the condition that America's rapist in chief is in, it took him 3 days to figure out what Mark Carney did to him, and he only started responding to it 3 days later. And someone got yes, obviously I have some information. I'll share it with you in just a second from some sources that I have about how Mark Carney sees what's going on and his response to really a concerted effort this last week after he found out that Mark Carney broke his soul. That the influence campaign to paint Mark Carney as a commie who loves Chinese toys and he's going to flood the U.S. market through Canada. Scott Bessent is still going on and on and on about it. His proxies are running around screaming about how Mark Carney is letting China, dictate, eat us alive the way that, Canada's a failed state and we'll let them do it. And I mean, every proxy's in on it. And that's how Mark Carney is on the right track. And I could get into a nuanced conversation, Steve, about the legitimacy of the 12th trade deal that Mark Carney has had to do to replace the business that Donald Trump does not want to do with the beautiful country of Canada. I could get into the conversation and tell you a little bit more about the LNG and the oil and the rare earth deal that we just did with China, but not just China, India. He announced that today. And Mark Carney's unique in that way. And I want to talk about him instead of kind of talking about the conflict between these two countries, because Mark Carney knows what I know, what every Canadian knows, what approximately 280 million Americans know, that this is a sim. The United States of America is being led by an absolute lunatic, a fascist dictator, a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, someone with severe dementia who is unwell, and someone who has the moral compass of Charlie fucking Manson. And he said a couple of things today after Fox News tried to run a show. He was asked about it in a scrum. And that scrum, he said, hey, Donald Trump said through Walls and Bessent that he had an aggressive phone call with you and you're going to walk back that free trade deal with China. And he said, hey, listen, yeah, Donald Trump called me. And Mark Carney is surgical with his comments. Donald Trump called me. We had a conversation wide ranging about many things. And I explained to him, and this is, I'm paraphrasing, but I explained to Mr. Trump, the president, that, we've got 12 trade deals, just did one with Trump. It's not a free trade deal, which is very important. Fox News called it a free trade deal. That's why they ran it up the flagpole. And we're going to do those deals. We're going to honor our word. And Donald Trump told me, that's great. That's great. Now, Mark Carney doesn't lie. And the other thing Mark Carney doesn't do is he doesn't bloviate or put himself at the center of attention, right? And in that moment where ego takes a backseat to doing the right thing, Marcus Aurelius always says this, always said, well, he said it once, and I repeat it always, but, stop worrying about what a good man should be and just be one. And Mark Carney is hyper focused on being that good man in the Western Hemisphere, where the biggest, armed superpower in the world is our next door neighbor, and they're threatening our security and the security of our allies. And he told the story of Donald Trump in Davos, which has now led to Mark Carney saying, I reiterated to the president of the United States on that call that I meant every word that came out of my mouth. Now, that is a tone-setting, precedent-setting example and a strategy and a playbook for every single member of the EU, to your point, to come behind Mark Carney and move forward with Canada. I could not be more proud, Steve, to be Canadian today. Not because, I like being cold and poutine's great and we're the country that ordered the chicken, you brought us the fish and we ate it anyway. I could not be more proud because in this moment, Mark Carney sees Donald Trump for who he is, and he undressed him. The emperor not only doesn't have any clothes, he's lying about the clothes that he says he has. And when this is over, will Mark Carney, back to your question, does he understand what he means? Mark Carney doesn't care about what this means to anybody. Mark Carney is appreciative, and I know this for a fact, of the support from Canadians and Americans for his values and virtues to continue to do the right thing because he sees America. We all do. And that's really the beautiful story about the relationship we have with the United States of America here in Canada, is we see the 280 million better Americans. We know who the MAG Americans are. We understand this is a sim. Mark Carney knows that too. And Mark Carney is not doing this for attention. Mark Carney is a multimillionaire. He was one of the smartest financial minds in the world. He had a couple of CEO jobs. He was running Brookfield at the time. He doesn't need this. He took probably a $10 million pay cut to do this. But why did he do it? He did it because to Mark Carney, the fruit of this life is being of good character and acts for the greater good. And that man is the kind of man that I would follow into war, and we all would here in this country.
If our countries did merge, and it was Trump versus Carney, I like our chances. Mark Carney could be president of North America pretty decisively.
Well, you know what, and Steve, if I can, I just want to point this out. I talked to somebody in Carney's orbit, one of our sources today, just about his rhetoric, not Donald Trump's rhetoric, but this stand that Mark Carney is taking. We haven't seen this version of him before because he would just pivot to other things. Mm-hmm. And Mark Carney doesn't want to be a leader. He just wants to do the job that needs to be done. And when we talked, we were talking about the butterfly effect of Donald Trump bringing, Canada closer together, unifying Canada, bringing Denmark and Greenland back together, bringing Denmark, Greenland, EU back together. The butterfly effect of what Mark Carney is going into phase two, right? Phase two is someone that's going to start making hard decisions. And I would like everybody watching to really look for a couple of different signposts of Mark Carney ratcheting up the influence campaign to kneecap fascism in North America and the Western Hemisphere. One of those signposts is going to be a statement that he is going to make about crimes being committed against our neighbors, in Minnesota, across the United States, the execution of Alex Pretty. And I've been pretty bullish about calling him out on that. The other thing you're going to start seeing are some really hard lines being drawn by Canada as a partner of the EU when it comes to the possibility of some sanctions. And the last thing I will say is there's a one-shot arrow that's currently being discussed. And that one-shot arrow is this Treasury bond deal that brought you and I together, Steve, where we had that conversation. That's not just a trigger. That's a package that is on the table. And that's a package on the table that you only use once because it will decimate the United States economy. Mm-hmm. So I'll leave all that there and just let you know that I have faith in Mark Carney. I think the rest of Canada does. And I'm grateful to hear that our American friends, Better America, are also really proud that we have a leader that is standing with 95% of Canada because we want our friends back.
Malcolm, some years ago, I'm not sure exactly that I could put a pin in it, but I remember when I stopped seeing cops dressed like policemen, and
Mm,
they started to in a small New Hampshire town. Why is that guy wearing jump boots, bloused into cargo pants in this small municipality? He's
hmm
not in the 82nd Airborne, and over 20 years time. I think it's about 20 years. We've seen the militarization of American policing right down to the uniforms. And now we see these ICE cosplayers. You're somebody who's seen combat in Ukraine, and we've all seen you in your combat kit. And Americans are familiar, as are our NATO allies, with their soldiers in combat kit in Iraq and Afghanistan. How crazy does it drive you to see these federal agents, bottom of the barrel federal agents, prison guards, some of them, and I don't mean to disparage being a federal prison guard as dishonorable work. It's not, but it's not a license to dress up like a Navy SEAL with a long gun, a semi-automatic rifle with a suppressor at it, and indiscriminately pointed at American citizens. So I don't mean to
hmm
be harsh there,
Well, you should be.
and I'm generalizing, but how crazy does it drive you to see that? And then can you assess just the incompetence of these people in the handling of their weapons, their equipment out on the streets as somebody who's proficient with a deadly weapon?
Yeah. Well, for many of us who are our age, right, of a certain age, the most militarized look you would have seen from a police officer would have been a state trooper wearing a drill instructor style, Smokey the Bear hat. That was it for a very, very long time. Granted, the rise of SWAT teams has changed the fabric a little bit. And full disclosure, in 1999, I went to a major SWAT training program for, basic SWAT officer school run by Heckler and Koch submachine guns in Sterling, Virginia. All the instructors were LAPD SWAT guys. But I was in the military. I needed the tactical training for the what I was doing at the time. And the what struck me was that there were about 8 other cops from like podunk police departments with like 2 officers. But they wanted to form SWAT teams. Everyone wanted to form a SWAT team. And the overwhelming majority of our students were Capitol Hill police, right? They were just forming their emergency response teams. But I just thought we had this guy from Iowa, we had this cop from Georgia, and they wanted all the kit. They wanted the submachine guns. They wanted the flashbangs and all of that stuff. Then after 9/11, I can tell you the moment that the special operations militarization hit the world and created this entire world of cosplayers. There is a famous photograph of a Navy SEAL on Mohammed Karzai, the president of Afghanistan's security detail. And it's the first time people saw them in relaxed grooming standards. Afghan style beards, civilian clothes, rigged out with body armor, long rifles, sidearms, looking, tactical Gucci, but that slovenly sort of look where they could wear plaid shirts. And everybody wanted to be these freaking SEAL Team 6 guys or these special forces guys. Everyone wanted to dress like that. And when I went to Iraq in 2003, right after the invasion of Iraq, and L. Paul Bremer created the private security industry by rejecting all U.S. Army security to contractors in Iraq. The explosion of what we called the tactical tuxedo, right? The khaki cargo pants, which at the time was Royal Robbins cargo pants, and knee pads and combat boots and polo shirt with long rifles. just went everywhere. And since that time, it's grown exponentially. And now you have all these guys, they watch movies like, 13 Hours, The Super Soakers of Benghazi, or these tactical movies where it's all about tactical movement. It's all about, having, 3 mags in your body armor because that's what the SEALs use. When I was on the Kharkiv counteroffensive line, I had 13 magazines, 3, but these guys all want to be them. And now they're all in multicam or civilian clothes, one or the other, the tactical tuxedo, and they all want long rifles because they all have been told they're going to be gun battling with Venezuelan gangbangers and all these things. And they're losers. They're losers. You can get a high school diploma gets you a job. You don't go to FLETC, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, where I'm sure they've taken my book, the Terrorist Recognition Handbook, off the shelves. They were buying almost 500 copies a year. And these guys go to FLETC now for 47 days, right? The previous program was another month. And they did it because it was for President 47. I'm not joking. It's the stupidest effing thing I've ever heard.
You
And
can't.
now this is them. They are a Geheimstaatspolizei, a state secret police, the acronym which is Gestapo. And they are empowered to kill on the orders of the president and a woman who is made Homeland Security Director because she killed a puppy and a goat. It's crazy. I can't stand watching these things. Cops I know that can't stand watching these things. Violating the Constitution is a felony in most places, constitutional rights. And now it's expected of you to abuse American citizens. This bullshit about they have reinterpreted search and seizure and that they can go into your car, smash your windows, enter your home without a warrant, wouldn't play at my house, right? I mean, this is just one of those things. I mean, literally the entirety of the fucking intolerable acts of 1774 have now been reinstated, minus that you put people in your house and make you pay for soldiers. That's the only thing that's missing from Mad King fucking Donald the Last, coercive acts that he's putting against the American people. And we've just reached the Boston Massacre stage of this story. And it's probably going to get worse. There probably will be a
No doubt. No doubt it's going to get worse. We are, let me just say, everybody who's joined us, who's watching, thesaveamericamovement.org. Go to thesaveamericamovement.org. Look at everything that's going on. We are advertising in Washington with messages to Chuck Schumer about holding the line and making sure that the Democratic Party does not permit more ICE funding with no strings attached, that the masks come off, that there are independent investigations. We are advertising messages from the American people to the Danish people in Copenhagen. We have our team in Greenland. We have camera crews surveilling ICE, documenting, witnessing. But one of the things we have going on in opposition that I'm very excited about is our ad campaign built around the Melania movie, Make Fuck, Get Green Card. We have our posters going up all over the country. And they'll be out all over the internet later. Our goal is to visit as much humiliation on her as possible. She's as blood covered as Donald Trump is. And the $75 million price tag on this movie is one of the greatest acts of corruption, corporate corruption, that I've ever seen in my lifetime. I will not ask you, Dean, to share with all of us your Melania impersonation, though it is incredible. And it fills me with a warmth and happiness inside that's tough to articulate. But I know Dean, that you've been a constant source of inspiration for me as we've put together the Make Fuck Get Green Card campaign for Melania. And as the movie gets ready to flop and embarrass and humiliate the Trump family, do you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, I do. And it's not necessarily thoughts in as much as this is a love letter to the world's most successful call girl slash Slovenian hooker. This is just another attempt to sane wash, something so ridiculous. Melania Trump, if she speaks 7 languages and pardon my aggressiveness here. If she
Well, a
speaks
lot
seven
of high-end
languages,
call girls, I do, right? From Eastern
yeah,
Europe.
they totally do. Yeah, it's strange how they're from Eastern Europe and she's got Putin's phone number and they talk about kids all the time. Anyway, be that as it may, the Melania movie in itself is not doing well overseas. One of the things that I think Americans should take real comfort in is that in the United States, I think they sold about 2,000 tickets. In the UK, do you know how many tickets have been sold to the 1 o'clock premiere and the 6 o'clock premiere? I have that number here
You're
with me.
talking in the country.
In the country, this is the entire country of England. What, 90 million people? 90 million? Melania, wide release. Wide release means every single fucking theater that they jam this, Pretty Woman on Acid with the Epstein Files movie documentary list. 3.
3,000.
3.
No,
3.
3 tickets.
0.
3
3.
tickets.
They've sold 3
3
tickets.
tickets.
1 to the 1 o'clock and 2 to the 6 o'clock.
And they were all wearing trench coats.
Yeah.
Carrying Kleenex.
And furry
Wow.
masks. Yeah. No, listen, what a disaster. Who cares? I mean, no one gives a shit about Melania. No one gives a shit about this documentary. And again, if you've seen the Liberty vans that the Save America movement, and by the way, that was a lot of fun for us today because it was put in the chat and we all got it at the same time. We're sitting around on our computers and I'm like, hey guys, get a load of this. Make Fuck Get Green Card is being advertised in Washington, D.C. in front of the premiere of the Kennedy Center. And then it was Eva Braun presents. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. But you know what? That's what the time requires. That's what this moment requires. Enough, hiding, enough, being colloquial and using nuance to explain what that movie is, who these people are. These are a family of degenerates that have, the moral compass of Charlie Manson. These are not good people. And this movie is an attempt to propagandize Melania Trump into some, genius linguistic expert who has the ability to, make kids' dreams come true by butchering a fucking Christmas book on television. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. And then you think about where she came from. Let's just fucking throw it all on the table. You think about where this woman came from. She was third in line to a man who probably has more sexually transmitted diseases than Peter North. And he is who he is. We know who he is. She's standing by him, knowing full well that he's in the Epstein files and that he's a pedophile and that he raped people while he was married. She was married to him. So if you're going to go see this movie and you think for a second you're going to see a hero, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case.
Okay.
I had
I have to add something to that.
Yes, please,
Okay.
by all means.
If any of you are scholars of antiquity, one of my favorite books, believe it or not, I got stuck on a submarine with it, and I read the entire thing cover to cover, was the book I, Claudius. And later they did a TV series of it. Well, Messalina was the wife of Claudius, and she ran a brothel in the palace. I mean, became arguably, if you're looking at classic antiquity, if you go to Oxford and Cambridge, they will all say that history's most well-documented whore is Messalina. Until now. So, Melania Trump, without any question, right, is now about to take the mantle of, no first lady has ever made money like this. Out of this $40 million, she pockets $37 million, if I'm not mistaken. That's not a joke. That's true.
Yeah.
That's her cut. And then the
It's
film
sick.
was made for, a six pack and
Do you know
and
who
a hand
directed the
job.
movie? Do you know who directed the movie?
Yeah, some
Brett
some
Ratner.
sex offender, right?
Who was Me
Yeah,
Too
Brett
in
Ratner.
Hollywood, and he's
Brett
seen with
Ratner.
Jean-Luc Purnell on Epstein Island, so they tapped him for it, and they said, "This is your way back in."
Yeah, and way back into what? So I'm just saying is that in if Messalina is any challenge here in 2,000 years, all right, there's going to be a classic book that's studied at Oxford on Mars or Cambridge on
Listen,
Ganymede, and it's
you
going to be called I fucking Claudius can't believe this shit.
listen. I To reinforce what you are saying, right? There is a story in the Daily Beast. And I have to say, like, I love the Daily Beast, right? Joanna Coles, the editor, has turned that thing around.
Yeah, it's
It's
a
great,
paper.
and it's relentless. And they had a story in there today that there are pictures of the scene in Mar-a-Lago from this weekend and the night that Alex Preddy was murdered. And when I saw the pictures of the party they had, I said it's like Caligula's time. Right?
Yeah.
They got dancers in scanty clothes inside of plastic balls, swimming in the pool. It's the
Yeah, I
craziest
saw it.
stuff you've ever seen. And of course, you got Tim Cook right at the White House in black tie, posing with Brett Ratner, disgracing Apple. It's just extraordinary. And it's Tim Cook. That guy's made himself into Melania's whore. And that's
Yeah.
something.
Mm.
Shows anything is
Mhm.
possible in America. Um,
Well, and here's one last thing, okay? Because she's partly responsible for all the disasters in the White House, particularly at Christmas. I've been to Versailles. I know it's over the top. I've seen a million fucking miles of Rococo, but the palace of Louis XVI concubine, the Trianon, is actually beautiful. This is never going to be beautiful in this White House. This is the most disgraceful, low rent thing that has ever happened. And if the next president has to restore the East Wing, tear down the
oh, yeah.
ballroom, rebuild the Rose Garden, and then get legislation that it's an impeachable offense to go down and destroy America's heritage.
Yeah. No question about it. I just wanted to share with you guys a quick story about law enforcement and about Canada and about justice in America, and then leave the last word to you guys from Greenland and bring it back to the people of Greenland. A great many of us who are revolted and appalled by ICE have a great deal of respect for cops, for law enforcement. The guy, the woman who walks a beat, works hard, keeping their community safe. And I had my sister has been visiting for the last couple of days, and she brought a friend along, and I'll keep her name confidential. She has a horse farm, and I can't tell you precisely where this farm is because it is a very, very special place, and it is a place of sanctuary and a place of secrecy. And she is required. I've been there and I've visited to be very careful about the location of this farm because of who lives there. There's a lot of retired police officers that live on this farm, and specifically, these officers are equine officers. They are the retired police horses of the New York City Police Department. And when a New York City Police Department horse retires, and it's important to remember that that horse is an officer of the department, and that horse has rank. So if the horse's name is Bob, that might be Sergeant Bob, and Sergeant Bob has a badge. One of the horses that lives its life out in sanctuary on this farm is the last living horse who responded on 9/11 to the attack. And that horse and the mounted officer were the first police and horse on the scene on 9/11 at the tower. So this farm is this place of sanctuary for these retired police horses, and they will live their life out there for the rest of their lives in peace, in a beautiful spot, bathing and swimming in this beautiful river, and then when they die, they'll be buried with honors there. And the farmhouse is a 18th century structure, and when you look at the roof line of the farmhouse, there is a line of black dashes around the roof line. And the first time I was there, the owner of the farm, my sister's friend, knowing how much I love history, asked me if I knew what that was a symbol of, that black dotted line. And I said I did not. I don't know what that means. And she said it's a code, a signal. And of course, Senior Chief Malcolm Nance is a code breaker, a cryptologist, a spy. And that was a symbol, a marking that house was a stop on the Underground Railroad. And that as the escaping slaves from the tyranny of the American South moved north, looking for sanctuary, they would be guided from farm to farm, house to house, knowing that in that house with those markings, there would be sanctuary for them. What's very special about that particular farmhouse and its legacy of sanctuary is that it was the last stop for the escaping slave before they crossed the frontier into Canada. And in Canada, there was freedom. And every American should always remember when we hear Canada denigrated, that Canada has been a moral light in the world for a very long time, and that there are places of sanctuary that exist, and there will be sanctuary again in our country, in our land, and peace will come on the other side of this titanic fight. When earlier in this conversation, Martisa talked about the EKG graph of emotions, that people go from utter despair to then great hope, being involved in a protest, being involved in pushing back against ICE, and then reconcile that optimism of doing something with the despair of, I can't believe I'm having to do this at all, up and down, over and over again. It's important to, when we think about these murders and the indiscriminate violence, to control our rage, to control our anger. And I talked about that the other day with one of our SAM steering committee members, Reverend William Barber, and Pastor Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove. And Bishop Barber said it was time for me to read again the eulogy delivered for three of the young girls, the children that were murdered in Birmingham by a Ku Klux Klan bomb. And to read the eulogy that Martin Luther King delivered in Birmingham about that senseless death and that violence. And it is an angry eulogy. And it is a righteously furious eulogy. And it is deeply, deeply, deeply relevant to this moment of chaos in the United States and around the world. And so I encourage everybody to go read the words of that eulogy and to know that through all of this terribleness, there is better days ahead. Our side will prevail, and that maybe the reason Trump has arrived is because the cost of our indifference has finally come in the form of a bill. And the way out of this is to drop the indifference and become engaged, because we live in a time where the right and the wrong are in a fierce battle against one another. And I'm thrilled to be in this fight with the two of you, my friends, two men I deeply admire. Thrilled to have you in Greenland. And I want to give you guys the last word to talk about anything you want to say about the experience you've had up there or anything else. It's been a fun conversation. We had some laughter. We had some serious talk. It started with an account of an American loser trying to run the American flag up a sacred flagpole in Nuuk, Greenland. That person, that American, that person who did that desecrated our flag, betrayed our American flag. And with that, Malcolm and Dean, close it out and bring us home on this conversation.
You know, I'm just sad that we have to reflect on these things so far from home. But being out of the United States, you know, our first 2 days here were crisis after crisis, where we couldn't even discuss Greenland. And then the city had a power outage, and every person in this city thought the United States was attacking, including the three of us. We actually went on a reconnaissance around the city to see where the generators were operating and if the airport's power was on, right? You know, because we projected that that's how they would invade, right? A special operation landing at Nuuk Airport when it was all blacked out. So it didn't turn out to be. It turns out that it was just bad weather. But this town was in a panic. This town was living in fear of America. It's just horrible that we had to come and experience that. But every person we meet on the street is wonderful. You know, they love people. They love each other. Many of these people recognize me from last year because the town's so small, you know, that when a black guy who's been on TV comes in on their local channel, KNS or KNR radio and television, they remember because time moves differently for them than it does for us. And I just love being around these people. You exude such, you know, great resilience. They live in this society. And these guys went to the museum today where they saw there's four, you know, mummies of three women and a baby that were in a cave from 600 years ago. They wear the exact same sealskin clothes made in the exact same manner as they are today. So this society never changes. But that America has now come here and has introduced panic, fear, and anxiety into them is just disgraceful.
You know, Steve, you think things are a certain way. We were talking about it at lunch today. You know, you look at Greenland through the lens of the screen, right? Whether it's television or you're Googling it to see what it looks like and you bring it up and it looks like desolation, and you hear stories about it's the least densely populated place in the world, which it is. And then you come here and you meet these people and you understand the importance of what's important to them. You know, the values and the virtues that they have that in no way, shape, or form align with MAGA values or American values for that matter. And that was born out in a trip to Kapisislet, which is this really small fishing community at the end of the second biggest fjord system in the world. There are two, the biggest fjord systems in the world are here. The two biggest are, one is on the East Coast, I believe, and one's on the West Coast. We were on the one on the West Coast, Nuuk, not far from us, 2 hours. We go to this fishing village, 40 people. It is very hard to live there. Three of us wiped out. The guy from Times Radio broke his camera. You know, it is hard to live here. but it is so stunning to look at. You've seen some of the visuals and the pictures that the team here, and I tell you what, the Save America team is just incredible. From Ken Harbaugh, Denver Riggleman, you were great last night with these guys. The team and I all went up, Malcolm. Everybody was in this little fishing village, and it was so stunning to look at. I said, to our host, I said, Orla, who's the biggest influencer here, Ole Olsen. Everybody needs to follow him on Twitter. He's basically Mr. Greenland. I said, Orla, well, what prevents the oligarchy from giving up their Greenlandish dreams, owning, invading this island, and getting Trump to do his dirty work with the greatest military in the world? And he said, well, you can't buy land here. And I said, what do you mean you can't buy land here? And he goes, no one owns land here. And I said, well, what are these houses on? He goes, well, they're on pieces of land that we allow them to live in. They're allowed to build a house. Then he said something really important, which should really ring true with Americans, specifically MAGA today, that has a dream, or anybody that thinks it's going to be a great idea for Donald Trump to invade. And this is the seriousness of these people. He looked at me and he's like, the land owns the people.
Right.
The people care for the land. And I want that to sit with everybody today in terms of ideology and mentality. When you're applying an American view or a Canadian view or a real estate view or a geopolitical view or a military view to this, these people in Greenland are the most beautiful culture I've ever met in my life. But their compass, it points straight north.
True north.
In ways that, we soft North Americans and Western civilizations do not understand. And I think it's really a valuable, piece for everybody to take away today from this podcast and from this Substack Live, because that is going to be the reason why the people of Greenland will never leave. And that is going to be the reason why, no matter what happens, if indeed there is some kind of invasion, that it will not work. It will not work. If the land doesn't kill them, the people will.
The weather
because
will.
they mean it.
Mother of the Sea, the cultural figure that did form the creation, which there's a statue down in the water, which has polar bear, otters, fish around this big bosom
And the
woman.
Mother of the Sea.
Mother of the Sea will resolve all problems. I mean, weather changes on a dime. The northern lights are going. That interferes with electromagnetic communications. And there's no place to parachute into here because it's all rocky mountain. And for 1,000 miles that way, there's nothing but a sheet of ice made up of mountains. By the way, no trees. No trees, so you can't even start a fire if you don't bring it with you.
And no one's hiding.
No one's hiding.
Perfect place to end it. Malcolm Nance, Black Man Spy, Dean Blundell, the Save America movement, The Warning. Follow all of these sites. We will be back at you, and we will keep in the fight all the way, all the time, until it is over. Good afternoon.